la famille.
So hi everyone again. My name is Yasin Rezgi. I'm from IBM Watson, based in London. Today I'm going to talk a bit about Chatbot. That's the whole purpose of this meetup. But I'm going to try to give you my perspective on Chatbot as I'm meeting a lot of companies, startups, or big corporations on how they're handling Chatbot. So Chatbot is not a new thing. It's already from a long time ago. But unfortunately, the current trend makes it like you may have a really bad app and you just add a chatbot layer. Hey, it's amazing. A lot of money. Well, do not do that. If your app is boring, just boring. Adding a chatbot layer will not save it. And again, in tech, we're always saying like, hey, this is cool, a new, funny, and cool thing, while it's really an old one. And here, basically having an autoresponder for your email is basically the simplest chatbot that you can build. And people are doing that from the 90s. So here really like no interactivity with people, but at least you're giving a clear information of the person not being available. So in a way, it's kind of chatbot. So here in my case, I will tell you why I think chatbots are really interesting. So that's my travel journey in 2016. I traveled a lot of countries. It was amazing, and I'm platinum with Air France, which is really cool. But I got a really big issue, which is I always need to get my boarding pass. And sometimes I forget to download the Air France app, or I may not have any more battery on my phone, so I will use my other phone. But the problem when you get to an airport, it's you need to download a 132 megabyte app just to get a boarding pass, which is like fully stupid. Of course, you can go to the machine and print one, but there is a queue, and of course, you don't want to talk to people. Yeah, I'm kind of like that asocial person. But the problem here is like, I just need an image. Why do I need to get your whole app? Of course, you paid designers and you're really proud of it, and the design's so amazing that you even look at your app every single day before you sleep because you're so proud of yourself. But here, in the use case of a user, honestly, I just don't care. I just want my boarding pass. So you need to think as the chatbots not being the new revolution of many ways, but just another channel where people will interact with your business, with your services, in a different way. So graphical user interface were basically a huge amount of businesses in the last recent years, but chatbot is just another way to interact with your business. But it's not a different business, it's just another way to interact. And also, like, there is another problem. Here are the numbers from US, where basically the average is people not downloading apps at all. So of course, the first time they're getting their new fresh iPhones, they will get Facebook, Twitter, well, not Twitter, it's not that trendy anymore, unfortunately, but Snapchat and all the other apps. But after that, they will stop downloading new apps. If you think your app is amazing and really beautiful, you may still not get users because people don't download apps anymore. Specifically, if just to get boarding pass, they may have to download 132 megabytes. The other problem of chatbot currently, I don't know if it's that visible, but currently everyone's like, hey, when do we want chatbot now? When do we want that precisely? Oh, sorry, I don't understand that. So most of the time, chatbots are made by developers. It's not like I'm blaming developers here. But we're giving training made by someone on a specific centric of persona, and we're not thinking about seniors or teenagers or foreigners or people from other countries. So basically, the chatbot can be used by the same person only. And that's the biggest issue with chatbots and why they are not rising up, because basically the data training is not that great and no one can interact with it. Also, you need to take care of different languages. So here is the first name, Mohammed, which is an Arabic name, and written in here in the first way in Latin characters. The second one, it's in Arabic characters. The third one is Arabic people trying to write in Arabic characters but not having an Arabic keyboard. So they will replace some sound with letters. And the most funny part here is some Arabic countries may use a specific letter for the same sound, but other countries with the same sound will use different numbers. And you're like, wait, what? And here you get the same problem. If you think everyone will interact in a proper way, talking in a polite way, where all your training is like every posh English talking to your app, you're really wrong. Because people will just talk to it like it will talk to their friends, or maybe in their own environment. So culture here is really important, and you really need to take care of that when you're building any data training to be able to recognize what the user wants to tell you. So now let me introduce you how IBM Watson can help you on that. So IBM Watson is an ongoing project that well, not a project anymore, it's a huge division now. But initially it started as a project where we're at IBM having a lot of researchers. We're having about 2,000 PhD people working within the company. And we're doing AI for a long time. So in the 90s, we created a supercomputer named Big Blue who beat the best chess player. So it's not like we're all around because now the Silicon Valley found like that's a really cool way to make money. It's basically we're doing AI because AI, we think, it will help the people to get, for everyone, an assistant, not to get over the world like Terminator and all the journalists talking about AI. But it's more about like everyone, even someone who is not a CEO or having an executive position, but it's more like everyone, as your mom, as your dad, your grandma, your boy, or your girl, will be able to talk to an AI and having an assistant helping on managing its working life, its personal life, for everything basically. So at IBM Watson, we're having a set of APIs you can use really easily with your app. So your logic is still stay in your business, but if you want some easy NLP, which is like natural language processing, if you need to be able to recognize image, speech, etc., we can handle that. So now I'm just going to show you and get you a quick overview, not getting too technical here, but just curious enough for you to have fun. So the first API, it's Watson Conversation. So if you want to build a chatbot and you're not an expert in machine learning, deep learning, whatever name they found out recently, here's an API for you. So basically we can understand intents, which is like action that user want to trigger, or entities, which are like object, words you want to recognize in a sentence, and build up that in a whole dialogue flow. Let me show you a bit more in details here. For example, let's say I want to be able to understand that my user wants to book a flight. I'm writing some sentences as user examples to be able to recognize that. Of course, I cannot just write 5 sentences that will be enough. More training, again, as I said, a teenager will talk differently than a senior. A foreigner might talk in a different way than a local, and you need to be able to get that. After that, you will be able to create entities. Like, I want to fly to Paris. Paris may mean Paris Charles de Gaulle, or also Paris Orly. So that's where it has an impact of being able to recognize these different entities. Of course, you can add more synonyms to be able to understand the way like people will talk about it. As here, the Wi-Fi password is Lamifa, which is basically another way to say the family. And finally, you want to build up a dialogue flow, because you don't want to talk like you will talk to a robot. You will just want to talk, you will talk to a real person. So based on the different possibilities the user will say, you want to recognize that. If he's asking you about, I want to book a flight, you will get the default answer. If you want to book a flight specifically to a country or a destination, you want like a more personalized way to talk to that person. Even make the conversation. Doesn't bring you directly business value, but people will feel more confident and comfortable with you. That you need to take care of. And finally, you want to be able to improve your data training. So we have a really great feature here where basically you will have all the logs of the conversation you had using our service. And you can retrain the service saying that sentence was wrong, like the intent you found is not the right one, or this one is irrelevant. Like that in the future, based on the current conversation, the system will understand more and get more detailed on whatever kind of intent you want to recognize. And all of that doesn't need to be like technical. You can give that to a person who is from the marketing division, the support, copywriters. Everyone can understand. It's really a simple GUI here. So now let's dig up with other APIs. Another one, which is natural language understanding, is to be able to recognize entities and relationship between words in a document. Let's say there is a document talking about the Leonardo DiCaprio winning an Oscar as best actor. We'll be able to tell you Leonardo DiCaprio is, as an entity, an actor. He got as an award the best actor award, and he got that during the Oscar ceremony. So after that, you can make your own sentences and just fill up the blanks with the answers you may find in a document. So that's how it's really simple. You just need to give a specific document and we can handle the rest. The other one, really funny and quite interesting to use, tone analyzer. Let's say you want to recognize what's the tone used by the user. If he's pissed off, if he's angry, disgusted, happy, or just neutral, polite. Based on the way he's talking to you, maybe you want to pick up and talk in the same way. You don't want to be all that neutral or a corporate bot. Maybe you just want to chill out and talk to them. And we can pick up that. Also, if you have a lot of emails to your support, and you want to be able to recognize if there is one customer that is really pissed off, you need to answer him ASAP. Otherwise, you may lose a client. And with that, you can filter and check which tone is used in the email. Another one, speech-to-text, really straightforward API. But here we can recognize different voices. Let's say you want to create automatic subtitles and say the voice A, which is, for example, the journalist, and voice B, which is the politician, I want different color of subtitles. You can handle that easily. And if you want to understand custom names, like speaking English words about technical words in French, if you give that to an automated service, you will end up having really weird transcription. Here you can say, for these words, I got the right transcription and the right sound for that. And the system will get to learn on that and will be definitely much better in the future. And nearly the last one that I want to present, Watson Discovery. So earlier I showed you natural language understanding. Here it's a mix of that with a search engine. So let's say, for example, you're giving a set of documents and without any training from your side, we're handling all the rest for you. Give me all the documents talking about entities actor in a positive way and entities realizator in a negative way. And we can find that on all the documents you just trained on the machine. And you don't have to do anything else than just query the API. So here, basically, the whole AI is abstracted for you, and you just need to query it. So you don't need to be like an expert developer to just interact with it. You can just use it. The last one is some people may need like low-level machine learning platform. Let's say, for example, you want to be able to do prediction on statistics you're feeding the machine with. Here you will be able to create your own model, train it, and after that, the system will pick up on that. As a demo of it, let me show you here a quick example. So all the slides are being uploaded now, so I will just put the link on the meetup page if you want to give it a try at home. So you don't need to take that many of pictures. Here the examples, we're taking the weather channel data, so to be able on each city where we're having airports to get the weather, the current weather, and the previous weather condition. We're getting delays from the flight status API, and based on the destination, the airport of departure, the company, and the weather condition, after training the whole system, we can predict you if your flight is going to be delayed. Imagine that tomorrow, here in Paris, you have the RATP or STIF, and getting that data and training the whole system on that, you may predict, saying like, hey, I want to give a ride and going in that place. By checking your numbers and making a prediction, you may give him a try and say like, hey, honestly, avoid the line 13, it sucks, right? Yeah. Avoid the line 13 because from my prediction, it's definitely going to be a huge delay at the time. Take the 14, the great one. Another demo, and all of that, the code is available. So if you want to customize it, fork it, do it in a different way, you can have all the code there. And if you have any question, of course, ping us, not a problem. Here what we did is the equivalent of the STIF in London named the TfL, Transport for London. And they have a public API where you can get all the CCTV images of the road. We trained a classifier to be able to recognize traffic jam image from a not traffic jam image. So when you select a bus line, we can get all the CCTVs there. And for each icon you can see on the left here, we can tell you if there is a traffic jam. So again here, on top of the weather, the line, the condition, etc., you may also check the CCTV to tell him, yeah, honestly, do not go there. It's like full of cars. You don't want to be delayed for your date. So really cool API so far. All of them are available as a free tier, and if you want to give a try, click to that link or copy it. So basically here you will get a free trial where you can give a try and check at home how it is. And of course, all the demos that I show so far are available online. So if you're really in a hurry, you can copy that link. Otherwise, just wait the slides to be online. So I didn't want to take that much of time because other people are here and are waiting to give really awesome talks. If you have any question, can I ask for questions? Yeah, you're allowed to ask questions. And otherwise, thank you, everyone.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I'm consulting in search engines. I had a question about the ownership of data. How is it managed and how do you control what your input?
Okay. So basically, whenever you send us data to be able to be processed, we're processing that for you. But all data, you are the only owner here. Basically, your data and the whole training and what the data trained gave us is only sandboxed to your account. We're not sharing that with other accounts for other benefits. So basically, it's your own data. Do not worry on that. That's how IBM got big corporation to use us, because we are really good on that.
What are the languages that we can use for the users?
So it depends on the API, but here, for example, if I go back quickly to conversation, so you're the one who is providing your own training here, because it's based on your specific business case. But by default, we are supporting English, French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, sorry, Japanese, Arabic, and in experimental, Dutch, Korean, Chinese, simplified, and traditional, covering Taiwan, China, and Hong Kong. I learned my lesson by heart.
Hello, thank you. I just want to know what are the data? Where does it come from? En gros, d'où viennent les données et comment vous les entraînez? Pour Facebook et le deep learning, il y a eu beaucoup d'améliorations parce qu'il y a une grosse banque d'images qui a été à disposition. Et est-ce qu'on a des banques de données similaires pour entraîner de façon correcte et efficace les chatbots?
So I will first translate in English for the people who didn't get the French part. Shame on you, you don't speak French. So here, basically, she was asking how we got our system trained. So on which data did we get trained? On Facebook, they got just to pick up on their pockets, if I can say. For us, basically, we have partners who worked with us and our own company, which is a huge one, getting data trained from partners where we are getting image, there is specific partnership with them, or data coming directly from our research centers. But after that, we're keeping training them by buying banks of data, basically. But otherwise, I would say your instance of conversation or the others got trained on your usage, but it's only sandboxed to your account. So if your partner is using a different account, you will not benefit basically of that training. But again, it's a choice of business model. Otherwise, thank you again. I will be around if you have any questions, and you can clap again.
That's me. I'm Jason Roach, Developer Relations at Slack. If you have any questions or comments, you can hit us on Slack API and Twitter. So Slack's mission is to make people's lives simpler, more productive, and more enjoyable. My team, the Developer Relations team at Slack, our goal is to provide you the tools and the documentation and the support so that you can make great apps to make our users' lives better and your users' lives better. So, useful. This is what it means to be useful. We consider a useful app one that provides value to your users as well as our users, which will thereby make them productive. So productive means, basically getting things done. How do you make your users productive? How do you make people productive with the Slack app? So the most common usage for Slack is notifications. You have information in one service or whatever that you need to get into Slack for your users to see. So a basic example of this is an app that we use every day called Envoy. Envoy has a very clear intent. A person has arrived, you need to go get them, you need to get up and show them around the office. So other notifications aren't as clear. So this one is basically just an RSS feed. Python has been updated. We may want to check it out at some point. There isn't really much work to be done here. But when you get some more complicated notifications, like let's say a GitHub pull request, there's work to be done here. So in order to provide an outlet to get that work done, we've added a link. The user clicks that link, goes out to GitHub, completes the workflow, comes back into the conversation. So when you think about notifications, you are pushing content in front of a user. So that content should be timely and informative. It shouldn't arrive hours later after the task has already been complete. It should be relevant to the audience. Don't post to general if your content is unique to a specific team. And it should be thoughtfully scoped. What I mean by this is if you have content that needs to go to one user, send it in a DM. Don't send it to general. Or you could send it to general, but if you have a team with thousands of people, it might come off as weird. Okay, so every time you send a notification, you're invoking a feeling in the user. The user receives that content, they read that content, they feel a certain way. If your content is super spammy, they may not feel super great. So notifications should feel clear and concise. The message you're trying to get across should be clear. The first time they read it, they should understand why they received that message. It should be interesting. You know, you can have a little bit of fun without making it too noisy. And it should provide rich content. What I mean by this is messages aren't just text. Messages support attachments, they support images. Have some fun with it, make it lively. If you have a service that's reporting stats, turn those into a graph, attach that as an image. So this is the workflow for basic text notifications with a link. So you have an app, the sweet boat over here. Your app is connected to Slack. Your app has a bot user. That bot user posts a notification. Your user has to click that link, go out to that third-party service, approve or deny the request, and then come back into the conversation. While that user was gone, another user may go out to complete that. You'll end up with a duplication of work. There's not a clear indication that somebody's handling it. So in order to make that a little bit better, you want to add some actionability to your app, to your notifications. So what I mean by actionability is provide a clear path of action, a clear path to get that work done. It should feel intuitive. So as soon as that notification comes in, there's an actionable item, a button, a menu, things like that. I'll get into the buttons and menus in a moment. But the messaging should be clear. It should be clear what those actions are going to do. And it should provide a path to get work done. So what I mean by that is don't piece part of the workflow into a message and then force the user out to complete it somewhere else. It feels weird. So in order to enable interactive notifications, we at Slack have recently released a couple of really neat features. A few months back, we released buttons. This allows you to add simple workflows into your messages. Right there in line, the user can take actions from the context of the conversation. And then a couple weeks ago, we added message menus. And message menus allow you to have a little bit more control over how the options are displayed. So these options here, that would be 3 buttons at least. Let's say you had a workflow where you wanted to assign a task to somebody. You have 20 users on a team, 50 users on a team. You can't show 50 buttons. You could, we've seen it, it's weird, don't do it. I mean, you can, it's just, it always looks weird. So message buttons allow you to move a workflow, in this case, a fairly simple workflow, straight into the message. So a user clicks that button, your server gets a request, it sees that action's been done, goes back and updates the message. Everybody on your team knows that message, that task has been handled. It's right there in the conversation. So here's how the workflow works behind that. Nope, that's not the slide I thought it was. So here's an example where that first button click triggers another round of buttons. So that first button's clicked, you update the message to show that you need additional information before that workflow can be done. So buttons aren't a one set option. You can change those to get more context around the workflow. This is the slide I thought that was. So you can see, rather than your app pushing the user out to a third-party service, your bot handles that for you. So all your user needs to do is click on that button. You click on the button, it's approved, it calls out to the service, updates the task, and then this will update the message in the channel and let the rest of the team know this task has been taken care of. And then message menus take that one step further. So rather than having, yes, no, binary options, a hard-coded list of buttons, you can have dynamic menus, which provide you with a few options. So the most common, like I said earlier, assigning a task. So rather than having buttons for every user, you can have the user right there in the list. Slack automatically populates every user on your team into this menu. So you don't need to know about any of the logic that goes into that. You can have channels, you can have conversations, DMs, or you could hard code a list of message menus to be attached to the message. So if you only have 3 options, let's say it's a rating system, you have 1 to 5, you could just attach that in the JSON payload of the attachment. So in this case, workflow is the same as before, but instead of clicking on a button, they're selecting a menu. It goes and assigns that to the user and updates the message. So this example, my teammate Ankur made, this is a complete workflow that allows a user to order coffee from right within the conversation. So you can see they're prompted with a button to start an order, and then it provides a little bit more information. What would you like in that? So start an order, it updates the attachment, he selects the type of coffee and the type of milk. So you can see as the steps are completed, the message is updated, the attachment is updated. So a message is not only text, it has these dynamic attachments as well, which can be updated on the fly. So now that we're updating and adding attachments and adding all these workflow elements, that can start to get kind of noisy. So we have a few tips to keep your messages tidy and keep your users clear and free to get work done. So one of those is update the message to show the status of the task. I've mentioned that a few times. It's super important. It helps quite a bit with the user experience. It keeps down on duplication of work. It's just a good thing to do. You can add content dynamically. So once a step has been completed, you can update that. And then when that content's no longer relevant, you can remove it. You can modify the message, remove the attachment. So here you can see Bruce is querying an account in Salesforce. So rather than prompting him for information and then appending it as a new message one after the other into the channel where the rest of the team can see, this is taking advantage of what we call ephemeral messages, which are scoped just to the user. So the user starts the workflow, the bot responds to him with a message only he can see, prompting him for a little bit more information around what he wants to show. So you can see once he selects all those options, he's prompted with the option to, as the animation restarts. So he selects the options and then it gives him this option to post to the conversation. So rather than showing that entire workflow in the channel, everyone else on the team only sees the result. So they only see the thing that's most relevant to them. So what do I mean by progressively add information? So Poly, which is this really cool poll thing, they have taken this on a really interesting angle. So they're using the ability to dynamically show content and modify the message to expand out the comment section of their polls. So that content's not always there. It's hidden by default, and you can expand it when you want to see it, and then it updates automatically. And if you noticed on any of the attachments, the screenshots that had attachments earlier, there's that colored band on the side, this colored band here. You can set the color of that. It defaults to blue, but you can set the color. So OpsGenie here, they take advantage of that to show the urgency of this task. So once the user takes action on this, they pick a task, they assign the task. You can see not only did they append the status of the message to the message payload, to the attachments, but they also updated the sidebar color. So now that when you're just scrolling through the channel, let's say you came back from lunch, a bunch of stuff happened, you know right away that these tasks are already taken care of. They're not red, they're not urgent. And then, as I mentioned before, clean up after yourself, or your bot in this case. So we have this really cool thing at work called Lunch Train. So if you want to, I'm sure anyone here who has organized an event or organized coffee or lunch with coworkers knows that that is a nightmare. So we wrote this thing which allows you to suggest a location, and then users can opt into it and they can board your train. The problem here, or not problem, but the situation that you encounter here is that this event expires after lunch. So if you left this up here after lunch, people would be clicking on it, they'd get confused, and that's just weird. So what we do is once that event happens, we update the state so it says these people went there and you can no longer opt into it. So when you go back through the channel history, it's just one nice, concise message that shows what happened and there's no more work to be done. So in summary, this is a lot of text. I don't expect you to read it. So basically, your app should provide your users with the information they need to get work done. Your messages should provide a clear path to get that work done and help them complete their tasks seamlessly without having to jump all over the place. Your app should update the state of the message to show that the work has been done so that you don't end up with a duplication of work. And if your app is useful, it will make people's lives easier, more productive, and more enjoyable. And this is how you can stay in touch with us. We have this really cool platform information bot. So if you're already building on Slack, I highly recommend you install that app. It will notify you of any API changes coming out, any cool features we're releasing. And then, of course, I skipped the end of that slide. So we're on Twitter at Slack API. Read our awesome documentation. The guy who writes it is amazing. There's a lot of Ghostbusters references in our docs for some reason. This is the hashtag for our tour. We're happy to be here. This is my first trip to Europe. Our roadmap, our platform roadmap is public. It's on Trello. So if you search Slack platform roadmap, go to the Trello link that comes up. You can see what we've done, what we're launching, what we worked on, what's coming up. This is me. That's my email. I'm Roach on Twitter and GitHub. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me there. And that's it. We have socks. I'm sure you all saw the socks. The socks are amazing. And that's it. Do we have any questions, comments, jokes?
Yeah, one question. So when are you implementing carousels?
So there's a fun hack you can do to implement carousels now, which is you can update the attachment with button clicks to change the content to the next slide. One of our partners, Beep Boop, made a really interesting demo to do that. But to answer your question realistically, it's a request we get a lot, but I don't know. If you check the roadmap, we have some other interactive elements coming up. Text fields is something that's asked for quite a bit, and that's roadmapped. So we're always open to input, but it's just not something that we have planned in the next immediate future.
How do you feel about the Facebook Messenger copying your emojis?
Can you add custom emojis on Facebook Messenger?
Yes, recently,
Oh.
on messages.
Oh. We like emoji. We want everyone to like emoji. I mean, emojis are great, so it's fine. Emojis make people happy, and that's what we want, whether it's our platform or elsewhere. We like having fun.
What's your favorite plugin in Slack?
Giphy. The newer version of Giphy, though, not the old one that would post whatever semi-offensive thing it found first. The new one where you can shuffle and pick one and then post it is probably my favorite, but that's only because I have an obsession with animated GIFs. But as far as work, we use the GitHub plugin quite a bit because we do a lot of open source work. So it shows us when issues come in, when pull requests are made. I'd like to see a little bit more functionality in there, but it's great. It provides a lot of the work that we do comes out of the bot or the notifications that bot posts. Thanks for having me. Thanks for using Slack.
So I'm Javier Gonzalez. Maybe I'll introduce myself. I'm the organizer of Chatbot Paris, but I'm also the co-founder of BotFuel. And with Yann Georget here, we are going to do a talk today about enterprise-ready chatbot development. Maybe a word about BotFuel before we start, because although we've done lots of effort to be known and of communication, you may know us a little less than IBM and Slack. So I'm not going to do these raise your hand stuff. What's important here is that we started BotFuel 1 year ago, 1 year and a half ago now, and we decided to build a chatbot development platform for enterprises. Why did we decide to do this? First good reason is we saw that there were a lot of people in the mass market field. Just to name a few, you have Google and Facebook that built their, or bought their chatbot development platforms. So we didn't want to compete with these guys. That's a very good reason. But the second reason is we thought from the beginning that chatbots will develop a lot in the coming months and years, and that the needs of companies will be growing every year, and they will need to get complex tools to develop their chatbots. So the talk we are going to do today is about what is specific in enterprises, in big corporates, about chatbot development. How do we know that? So we've been in contact in the last year and a half, either directly or through partners that have developed chatbots for big companies using our technology. And we want to share with you, a few hints about what's specific, what you should focus on when you do these type of projects. So maybe first a word about the use cases. What are big companies' use cases right now? You have here the main ones. You have conversational commerce, so you know that one very well because this is a B2C use case. So companies are using chatbots to sell their products, a lot through Facebook Messenger, of course, not only, but also through Slack. But a lot through Facebook Messenger. And these are B2C chatbots. The second use case is, of course, automation of relationship management, automated support. And here is a different use case, because in the first case, you have product managers willing to implement chatbots to sell more. Here you have full people in charge of client relationship, willing to automate their processes and automate the client interaction. So it's a very different team within the big companies and groups that is handling this topic. And usually the client relationship projects about chatbots are also huge projects involving lots of people, involving changes in the processes of the companies, and involving also a lot of internal IT working on these projects. So you see you have a second type of project of big companies, very different. You have a third type of project that we've seen a lot in the past months, which is what we call workplace bots. And here again, different teams working on this type of project, different channels. For automated support, companies use a lot web chat, and they don't want to use Facebook Messenger, for instance. They use web chat. For workplace bot, well, they use different tools. They usually use the web chats they use internally. So be it Slack, be it Skype, be it Link, they want to use these channels to implement this project. And for workplace bots, you will see that the companies have their own constraints. And last, you have also a use case about brand communication. So this is again a use case where the most used channel is Facebook Messenger, and where companies are trying to replace a part of the community management they were doing on social networks through chatbots. And here again, it's more the marketing teams that will be in charge of handling these chatbot projects. So, after we've said that, we've seen that use cases, several different use cases. So where do companies, French companies, because that's what we know more, where do they stand now in terms of chatbot development? What have they tried? So they've tried several things. They're discovering the chatbot ecosystem. It's difficult for them because sometimes they're not very well equipped to follow what's going on regarding chatbots. They've lots of times heard things about AI, deep learning, that make them think that chatbots can be easily developed, or that they work alone without development. So of course, when you meet companies, you meet very different people with very different knowledge of what chatbot is. But what I want to tell you here is that these companies have started trying SaaS solutions to develop chatbots. So those are some solutions that you already know. They are called Chatfuel, API, WeetAI, etc. They've also, lots of them, of course, they've turned to their digital agencies that they use to develop mobile application or websites, and they've asked them, well, how should I develop a chatbot? Can you do it for me? And of course, they've been doing that a lot. And now we're seeing, let's say, a year after Facebook Messenger, after Facebook launched Messenger, and after all those months of these companies hearing about chatbots, some of them have decided to build their internal chatbot development teams. So the most advanced are doing this. And they're doing it for one reason, because they think that chatbots are becoming key to their strategies. So maybe another word of why it's very different to develop for a big company. Well, the main reason is you don't have one person deciding what to do or how you should do it. You have many, many people participating to a project. And I've just listed here a few of the people you may encounter when you develop a chatbot for a company. So of course you have sometimes the marketing of innovation team that are following what's happening in the market, and very often they are the guys asking for a chatbot and trying to put chatbots into the enterprise, trying to evangelize people within the enterprise on why there should be a chatbot. So that's the first person you have to convince usually, but it's not enough. You have also to convince IT people that within companies, big companies, you have a lot of IT constraints. Third, you have to convince the product people that they should invest resources in this new channel and that they will get a return on investment. And you will also need to convince the legal people that the chatbot will comply with all the regulations the company is subject to. And you know that, for instance, finance companies can be subject to lots of regulations. And last but not least, of course, you have to convince developers that your solution is the best one. And indeed, these developers we are now seeing within the companies lots of developers being interested by chatbots and trying to pick the right solutions.
So as we said before, since Facebook launched chatbot on Messenger, many chatbots have been developed, probably more than 50,000. Most of them are useless. And now companies want to develop useful chatbots. And we will see that they have constraints. They have constraints that they have to satisfy. So let's try to dig into that and see some of the constraints that the companies should satisfy in order to build useful chatbots. So we have tried to define 5 buckets: data security, test, scale or scalability, control, and analytics. So now let's have a quick look at these constraints. So here there is a lot of text. I'm going to explain. When it comes to data security, maybe there are some sectors that could come to your mind, like the finance sector, the insurance sector, the legal sector, or health also. But when you talk to companies, as we do at BotFuel, you would be surprised to see that actually any sector, even e-commerce, for example, has data security constraints. So what does it mean? It means that these companies, they usually don't want their data to be sent to some place that they don't know, to the cloud, for example. And they usually want to keep the control on their data. So it means that in some case, it's not feasible for them to have their data treated, handled, manipulated by a service based outside of Europe, for example, in the US. For some companies, it's not an option. Or even, for some of them, outside of France. Or for the most picky, like, for example, some banks or companies in the health sector, they want to be able to host the chatbot and the services on which the chatbot depends on their own data centers. So it's a very hard constraint. So if you are developing a chatbot for this type of companies, you should be able to answer this question. Can you host your chatbot entirely on the on-premise? The second constraint is about testability and test. You all know the motto: if it's not tested, it's broken. And for some companies, it's and probably most of them, it's really important because these companies, they want to implement a service as a chatbot, as a conversational agent. They want probably to port an existing service to a chatbot, and of course, they want to guarantee that their service is functioning properly, that there are no regression. And you know that a chatbot usually learns over time. We'll go into that later. So how do you, as a company, how do you make sure that your service keeps working as expected when you update the training set of the chatbot, when you update the algorithms? So you see that it's necessary to write tests. So it means that when you develop a chatbot, you should have a way to develop tests. Of course, there are different types of tests. At BotFuel, we think that if we had to develop only one type of test, it would be acceptance test. So in this case, you want to mimic a user, and you want to simulate a conversation. So here is an example of a very simple conversation with 2 sentences. I want to travel, je veux voyager, and then stop. And you want to test that the bot came back to the root state. So it's a very simple test. It's not very interesting, but what's interesting, the fact that it's an acceptance test, it simulates a user, and just doing that, you can cover many regressions. Scalability is also a very interesting topic. We have been surprised at BotFuel to see that some of our clients came to us saying that they couldn't get any SLA by big companies such as API.ai, for example. They wanted to develop a service with a large number of users So they were expecting peaks in terms of requests. So they just wanted a guarantee that the bot would be able to support peaks of, let's say, hundreds of thousands of concurrent requests. And these companies, like API.ai or With.ai, since they are targeting the mass market, they don't have an answer for that. They just don't care. It's not their market. So they are not able to guarantee that for a single client, even if it's a big company, they can scale up to that point. At Botfuel, of course, we are very small, so we want to offer these guarantees. So we do a lot of load tests on our internal web services to guarantee that the bot can scale. And of course, we are able to scale the bots and the web services. Then there is this notion of, as Javier said, the fact that for big companies, chatbots are becoming part of their strategy. And since it's part of their strategy, they want to, they don't want to delegate the chatbots and the development of chatbots to external companies, or at least not fully. They want to be able to view the code, to fix the code, to maintain the code, to extend the code, and it's a recurrent request from big clients. They want to have access to the code, and so they want to be able to participate. So we'll see later, but that's one of the reasons why we think at Botfuel that bots should be code that you can share, that you can version, that you can put on GitHub, for example. Last constraints, it's about the performance of the bot. When you implement a service through a bot, you want to measure how it works. You want to view some metrics. You want to be able to understand what the users are saying to your bots, what they are talking about, if they are happy or not. So you need a tool to view these metrics, so an analytics tool. There are already a few on the market. Here it's a screenshot of BotMeter, our own solution, but there are many on the market. But it's really something really important for the users. It's for the companies to be able to understand how the bot perform. So I said a few words about these 5 constraints. Now let's move to something a bit different. Let's step back a little bit and let's see how we can turn these constraints into principles for bots or for bots building solutions. From the constraints, data security, testability, scalability, and control, we think that we can deduce a principle which is bots are code, as we said before. So we really believe in the fact that as maybe mobile application or web application, bots should be treated as code, and that the fact to configure a bot in a SaaS application is, in most cases, not sufficient. So for building enterprise-grade bots, we think that the solution is to treat bots as code. From the constraints, control, and analytics, of course, you can deduce that bots should be able to learn, because you want to be able, you want your bots to improve over time. You want to be able to make them answer in a better way. So they should be able to learn. Bots are code and bots can learn are only 2 of the 9 principles that we have put together in something that we call the Chatbot manifesto. So the Chatbot manifesto is a set of principles that should be implemented in some way by bot building solutions. And we try, so it's a vision, it's something that we try to implement at Botfuel. Of course, it's a work in progress. So if you want to take some homework with you, you should browse chatbotmanifesto.org and put your comments about what should be a good bot building solution. Thank you.
It's more a comment rather than a question. We found with some clients, in terms of principle, when we are talking about training from user, you need to be sure that you're filtering that training. First, because if you guys remember the chatbot made by Microsoft on Twitter, which became a Nazi homophobic chatbot within 24 hours, but also, even if it's like good data, if you're not filtering or putting a limit per users, you may have a power user who will make the chatbot really good for him or her, but not for the rest of the people, because he's actually using much more than other people. So basically, his usage is more important. And in terms of data training, that has to be balanced in a certain way. You cannot just let one user basically setting the whole app just around him or her. So in the continuation of principles, that's definitely something I wanted to add.
How is the learning implemented in Botfuel? You said about how to learn.
BotMeter, our analytics platform, is a tool that our clients use to understand how the bot performs, what is understood and what is not. And from that, you can get the data to improve the bot by extending the training sets, maybe adding some intents. So we think that there should be a feedback loop, which is provided through BotMeter, but that there shouldn't be an automated way, a fully automated way for the bot to learn, because as what was just said, we all have in mind the Microsoft Thai example, where the bot learns by itself, but learns bad things. So we think that it should be supervised by a human.
Actually, I thought long and hard about this issue as well. And one thing that strikes me today is a bot at the workplace. We're talking about work condition. And I think this is very, very different from B2C bots, because obviously people there are trained, they are paid, they can get fired if they do something stupid. It's a big, big change, a big difference, I would say. So in my opinion, what you're saying about supervised training is absolutely true for B2C bots, but I think in B2B we can go a bit further and maybe have the bots being self-trained just on the basis of trust, because everything is logged, everything. You mentioned the constraint of building bots in a company, and clearly in a company you keep audit logs, audit trails. If someone does something stupid, well, you talk to HR. So anyway, that's just something I wanted to add.
I would like to come back to the training data again. If we take a case like customer support, say in a finance company, because a French bank recently talked about that, how do you merge the business data with the basic underlying natural language data needed to support question and answers? I mean, you're offering a basis on top of which companies are building their own data and acquiring their own knowledge. Is that really the way it works?
Yes, that's a very good question. In fact, you're right. What you're right to say is that these companies have lots of ambition about the chatbots they want to build. But unfortunately, in many cases, they don't have that much data. And if they have the data, it's often conversations between humans, and we all know that these conversations do not resemble a conversation that the human has with a bot. If they have this data human with human, they probably don't have it well tagged, which is another problem. Which conversations went well, which didn't. So you have to go through a lot of manual work to have very well tagged data. So at BotFuel, the way we address this problem is we've tried to use the techniques that will require less data from our clients. It involves creating with the clients, of course, the data, either from existing conversation, either from examples. So it requires some manual work, but we've used the right machine learning algorithms and also the right we've also the right pre-training of our algorithms ourselves, so that we make sure that we don't spend weeks or months on getting this data. It usually takes days to work with the company creating this data. So for instance, when you do entity extraction is extracting locations, extracting dates, extracting, I don't know, colors from sentences. That's something that you can very often pre-train so that it makes so that it's easier for your client to develop a chatbot.
But to answer more specifically, yes, it's a mix of pre-trained models and customer-specific models, or generic corpuses and customer-specific corpuses, for example. So it's a mix of both.
How do you do success rate evolve during the learning phase? This rate improve day after day, but how does it improve, and what is the maximum successful rate, and is it depending on the domain? What is your experience?
Yeah, it's very difficult to answer that question and to give you, if you're expecting a percentage of successful requests, it's very difficult to answer for two reasons. First, the narrower the field, the more successful the bot. I mean, if you have a bot that can only answer about insurance products, then it will be more successful, of course. And the second thing is that it really depends on how you sell the bot to the user. I mean, if you do a bot that is doing insurance product, but you don't tell the user at the beginning, then he's going to ask about the weather tomorrow, about he will be trying to order a pizza, and it will not work. So it's really the combination of a very narrow, a narrow field and a good interaction with the user, being able to tell either at the beginning or during the conversation what he can ask and what he can't. But in some cases, we can reach 80 or 90% successful requests. But
yeah, this was to follow up your question actually. So what is the metric you use to measure if a conversation with a bot is successful? I know that it is an open it's an open-end question actually. I've seen a talk by Weston from Facebook Research on this. So what do you use to measure the success of a bot? Because you can measure the success of your entity or intent classifications, but how do you measure the success of the interaction with a bot, especially in the workplace?
More basic than that, what we use to measure is two things: conversion rate, and that means that we have to define what the conversion is specifically for each bot. If it's a bot that sells a product, then the conversion will be, is the user buying the product or not? If it's a bot about asking questions, then it's, did the bot answer the questions correctly? So we measure conversions and number of messages to conversion, which we think are really the two key metrics that interest our clients.
My question is on accessibility of the bot. What can be done to use chatbots through regular SMS and avoid to download another app like Facebook or any other app? Because this is a key problem to get users still.
So I would say the more conversational your bot is, then the easier it is to deploy it on a platform which doesn't have graphical artifacts. So if you do a purely conversational chatbot without any buttons, without any carousels, then you can talk to him in natural language only, and then you can use SMSs. So that would be my answer. I don't know if it's...
Okay, thank you.
Que la famille.